There, students, my goal and objective today is to give you a very quick, if I may, maybe not so quick, legislative branch review, talking about all the things that we've taught you for this branch of government. And the purpose is to also give you a better chance of passing your end of year final on the legislative branch review. So legislative branch test. Let's get started in covering all the things. Feel free to pause at any time and reverse the video to hear things over or watch a second time. Your call. Let's start. The legislative branch, as well as the other two branches, the executive and the judicial, were all part of this system of checks and balances. The purpose, after we beat the British, was to not have a monarchy again. And the goal was to make sure that each branch did not have too much power. That is that system of checks and balances where each can check the other. Remember that each branch has its own laws, or rules, I should say. It has its own rules. The legislative branch's duty is to make laws. The executive branch is to enforce them, and the judicial is to interpret the laws. So maybe that's a good place to start. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the Constitutional Convention. Remember Benjamin Franklin, George Washington here, those heavy hitters, those really important founding fathers, met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1776 in the hot summer months from May to September, and they wrote our Constitution, making the three branches of government. And they did that because they did not want a monarchy again. They also knew that we had to have government. We could not have a state of nature where we're at constant chaos and war. We're wondering what we are going to do. Remember that some of the founding fathers had trouble getting all states, like Boston, Massachusetts, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. They had trouble getting those bigger states back then to sign the Constitution and agree with it because it did not protect the first individual rights that we have. We call the first 10 amendments the Bill of Rights, and that is an important concept to understand because those protections to our individual freedoms were important to them. So they held out, but they did eventually ratify the Constitution, creating our three branches of government and installing these individual rights for people, such as the First Amendment we see in this picture, which is your right to assemble and your right to practice a religion if you choose, the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, and the freedom to petition. Those were individual rights that they needed so that we could still speak our minds and not be arrested for saying what's on our mind. Another part of the Bill of Rights was the Second Amendment, our right to bear arms. Another one related here would be the Fifth and Sixth Amendment. Under the Fifth Amendment, remember, we have the right to remain silent and not self-incriminate ourselves, but it's also your right to a speedy trial. That's the Sixth Amendment. And also your right to a lawyer, even if you can't afford one. That's the Sixth Amendment. And then we jump over to some of the other amendments that are important to know for your test, such as the 13th right here, where slavery was banned. It is illegal to own people and to force them to serve against their will. So that's the 13th Amendment. And then, maybe I should write some of these down. That's 5th. This is 6th. This was 2nd. This was 1st. Then going on over time, we added more amendments to protect individual rights. And in the 15th Amendment here, we see African Americans earned the right to vote. Until that was passed in the 1860s, after Lincoln, his assassination, African Americans were not allowed to vote, but now they were with the 15th Amendment. Then we have the 18th Amendment, which, remember, at 18 you're too young to drink. That's how I taught you that earlier. The 18th Amendment is prohibition. They got rid of drinking. They thought it was causing crime and disease and other social problems. So they stopped the ability to make, create, and sell alcohol, and it didn't work. So we have the 21st Amendment bringing it back. It kind of reversed the 18th Amendment. So those two go hand in hand. And remember how I said you can remember it? At 18, you're too young to drink, but at 21, you can. Let's back up, though. In between those two amendments was the 19th Amendment, and that allowed women the right to vote for the first time. That didn't happen until about 1920. Finally, let's jump down to the 26th Amendment, one of our last. There are 27. Is there 27 or 26? Holy crap, Mr. Rush doesn't know. Better look it up. How many amendments are there? I think there's 27. I was right, 27, good, phew. Anyways, the 26th Amendment said that 18-year-olds can vote. It's the 18-year-old vote. The funny thing was there was a period of time where 18-year-olds could not vote, but they could go fight overseas and lose their life. So that's why we have this button, old enough to fight, old enough to vote. So the 26th Amendment was the 18-year-old vote. Moving on, we know the 21st Amendment was prohibition, and I wanted to cover this because the 18th Amendment, which is creating prohibition, was undone by the 21st, similar to how Plessy versus Ferguson, which allowed segregation, the separation of blacks and whites in public restrooms and restaurants, water fountains, and bathrooms. Brown versus Board undoes that. So we got an analogy here. The 18th Amendment prohibition is reversed by the 21st Amendment, and Plessy versus Ferguson is reversed by Brown versus Board, okay? Which said we cannot segregate in schools or public places anymore. All right, let's cover some basics now that I've covered the amendments. Remember, we covered the United States preamble or introduction to the Constitution, and it said some really important words. It said, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice," which means laws, "ensure domestic tranquility," which means peace at home and overseas, but within our nation, keeping the peace, tranquil means peace, "provide for the common defense," which means defend our country in times of need, "promote the general welfare," which is like the government giving us money when we need it, such as during COVID-19. Promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty, which is freedom, to ourselves and our posterity. Our posterity is future generations. So I'm just going to put next gen on here. It's the next generation. So my posterity is my kids. Your posterity would be your kids. To ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So that is the preamble. You'll need to know that and some of those words and their definitions. Now, backing up, the Constitutional Convention created the Constitution, and it created the three branches of government. In the legislative branch, remember, we created Congress. Congress is the House and the Senate all together. It's both. So if you're a congressman, you can be a senator, or you can be a House member. And remember, there were a couple of plans that were discussed during the Constitutional Convention to create our new system of government. One idea was the New Jersey Plan. The New Jersey Plan said that we should be based on equality, representation should be, and it was a really important idea for small states. The Virginia Plan said, nope, we need to have population-based representation so that the larger states by population have a greater say. What they did is they added both of these together and created the Great Compromise. And under that today, it said that, yep, the Senate would be equal representation. So every state would get 2 members. That's how we get 150 times 2. But the House of Representatives would follow the Virginia Plan, where it would be population-based. So the states with greater population would have more members. Look at Texas. Texas has 40 nowadays. Wisconsin has 10. California has 54. South Dakota has 3. Alaska has 3. It's all because of population. Now, if we look more specifically at how our Constitution creates rules for our states and breaks it down into lawmaking bodies, we can see that in Wisconsin, we have the legislative branch and we get to vote for lawmakers, right? Our lawmakers are Glenn Grothman. He is a representative for District 6, right? Wisconsin has 8 districts. And Glenn Grothman here is our representative in Neenah. He represents District 6. All House members, whether you're in Wisconsin or Texas or New York, serve a 2-year term in the House, and you got to be 25 years old in order to serve. But if we look at our Senate, we each have 2 members. We have Tammy Baldwin and we have Ron Johnson. They serve a 6-year term, and you must be 30 years old in order to be a senator. The cool thing is about either of these jobs is that they can be reelected unlimited times. So as long as you win another election, you can serve again. Okay? The final thing I'm going to say about the L branch is that in order for laws to pass, we must pass both houses. All right? We must pass in the House. We must pass that law in the Senate. Then it goes to the president, and if the president wants, they can veto the bill before it becomes a law. If the president vetoes the bill, remember that magic number of 2/3? We can override presidential veto with a 2/3 vote in both houses. But either way, if a bill is to become a law, it's got to pass the House, it's got to pass the Senate, it can get presidential approval and just be signed. But if it gets rejected or vetoed, it can go back and get a 2/3 vote in both houses to still become a law. Kiddos, hopefully that helps you get a better grade on your test for the legislative branch. See me with any questions, or certainly rewind and listen to the video again. Good luck.